In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to deploy Tornjak with OIDC Discovery Service Provider, and then using this environment, we would be accessing Amazon AWS S3 storage from OpenShift cluster. And I'm following this documentation here under Trusted Service Identity, Docs, Spire OIDC tutorial. So the first step, we're going to set up a kubeconfig for the OpenShift environment. Let's verify the access. Okay, it looks like I have 3 worker nodes. All good. You've seen already the tutorial that shows how to deploy OpenShift, earn Helm charts, and register the workload registrar. So today we run the setup with the OIDC plugin. So here's the format. We're gonna pass the name of the cluster, SpaceX, trust domain, OpenShift SpaceX, and we are using the OIDC flag for the plugin. The script confirms that all the prerequisites are installed. Okay, installation is completed. So now let's see a few important things. First, right here, it shows that OIDC plugin is enabled, and this is going to be our discovery URL. We're going to be using this in a second. Now here, these are our access points for Tornjak. We can use TLS and simple HTTP. And here, it displays the access points to the OIDC. So before we do anything, let's make sure this access point is open. So I'm simply just copy the request. Great, I can access it. Let's see if the keys can be accessed as well. Perfect. The setup on the Tornjak server is completed. Okay, so before we go to installation of agents, we need to get the Spire server configuration. It's here. Let's copy this and paste here. And now we are ready to deploy the agents. Looks like there was already installation happening before, so let me just delete this and overwrite. Okay, the installation has been completed successfully, no errors. Okay, so we created a cluster, we tested the endpoint, we installed the Spire agents. Let's see if they are all running. Okay, we have 3 agents running and 1 registrar. So now we can follow the AWS 3 storage setup. We need to create the AWS bucket, and it's done right here. I called my Mariusz Spire bucket, and I have 2 test files inside this bucket. So let's continue. Set up the OIDC identity provider on AWS. Okay, so let's go there. We click Add Provider, Open ID, Connect, and here we have to provide the URL for our OIDC plugin. That's this guy. Already takes HTTPS, so I'm not going to use it. Don't use the slash at the end. Get thumbprint. Perfect, it all works. Add provider. Oh, the audience is my S3. Yes, right here, my S3. Add provider. Okay, so our provider has been created right here. Next step, create AWS IAM policy. And here's the sample. We're going to replace the my test bucket with our own bucket name. In this case, it's my Mariusz Spire bucket. I already create one here. And this policy allows us to access the AWS S3 specific bucket. Okay, so we have it. Now we're going to tie the identity provider to this policy through the role. So let's go to roles, OIDC, create role, web identity, and we're going to pick the identity provider that we just created, which is this guy. Audience, my S3. Here, let's find the policy that we just created. Don't click on the policy, just click here on the checkpoint. Next. No tags. Review. Let's put some name. Okay, so the role has been created. So now we want to add the SPIFFE ID into the IAM role. So click roles on the left. Let's pick the role that we just created. Trust relationship, edit trust relationship. So here we want to modify this as follow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the identity of our workload. The one that we're going to be using for this test has the following identity. Right here, this annotation describes what's the identity for this workload. So the format is following. This is the region. This is the cluster name, namespace, service account, container name, and the ID of the image. So in our example, we would like to use the following condition. It has to be any region in Europe, any cluster name, any namespace, but specific service account, specific container name, and specific image. And we use audience my S3. So update trust policy. Perfect. Now let's copy this role ARN and I'll store it right here. We're going to be using this later. So you can see all the conditions are defined here. Next. So once we have this operational, now let's start the workload. So we're going to be using the Mars SpaceX. This is exactly the file we're using here. I'll just keep this here for later. Create in the default namespace. Create the deployment in the default namespace. Now let's see if the container was created. Okay, container is up and running. Let's log in inside. So once I'm inside a container, I would like to be able to get identity for this container. So the format is following. We're going to use the already installed Spire agent libraries, and we're going to fetch identity using JWT format for the audience my S3. And since this container can talk to the Spire agent through the socket, we're going to use this. Okay, so now we got the identity. This part right here is the JWT token. We can actually review the content. And we can see this is when it expires. This is the identity. So it's running in EU, Germany, on the SpaceX 01 cluster, using the default namespace, Elon Musk service account, Mars mission container. That's the encoded representation of the image. Okay, so we're going to capture this JWT token and store it locally. Now we're going to use this token to obtain access to AWS S3 bucket. So the format is following. We're going to be using a role, and identity of this role we captured earlier is right here. We're going to pass the token. Based on the results, we're going to invoke copy from S3. Location is my Mariusz Spire bucket. We grab one of the files there and we'll copy this file to the local system. Okay, looks like the file has been copied, which means all the requirements were fulfilled. The policy was satisfied. So now we should be able to see the content of the secret file. And there are just some Elon Musk quotes. Okay, so it confirms that the identity of this container was verified. It fulfilled the requirements of the policy using the OIDC identity provider. So it's all good. Thank you.